know when you have that big business vision, that fire in your gut, and yet your feet feel stuck in the mud. Today, we are talking about how to stop being a creative avoider so that we can start embracing big changes with less anxiety. If you're just jumping on for the first time, my name is Jen Casey. I am a business strategy coach, and I work with online entrepreneurs in the health and wellness field who want to turn their social media into sales and monetize their online businesses. A lot of the people that I work with, they sit there and say, I'm not creative on social media. They're taking all of that time and energy and creativity that they could be spending on creating content and creating their dream life, and they're pouring it into coming up with little mind tricks. You're outsmarting yourself. If you're that person who wants to get to the next level in your business, realize right now that you may be actually sabotaging your potential success. And I found a great list from changingminds.org, and so I want to read you these, and then I want to share with you the most common ones that I see working with new and thriving health and wellness entrepreneurs. When we are in that place where we've got to get to that next level, where we are presented with doing something that feels uncomfortable, it is new, it is outside of our realm of feeling confident, and we're starting to feel vulnerable or scared or fearful, or we're afraid that we're going to experience pain, we might act out. This is essentially not coping, but giving into the physical pressure to misbehave. You may have a client who, when they enroll in one of your programs or start working with you, suddenly they start kind of acting like a kid a little bit, acting out and just being a serious handful. And you're sitting there going, what? Like, you're an adult, what are you doing? But in reality, this is the person not being able to emotionally acknowledge what's happening for them. They're not able to acknowledge their fear, and so it's manifesting itself in this avoidant mechanism, this avoidant behavior. The next one is just straight up avoidance, mentally or physically avoiding something that causes you distress. Then we've got denial, right? We all know that one. Refusing to acknowledge that something has occurred. Displacement, shifting intended action to a safer target. Distancing, so moving away from it. Fantasy, escaping reality into a world of possibility. Intellectualization, avoiding emotion by focusing on facts and logic, so not allowing yourself to really feel into it. This idealization, playing up the good points and ignoring the limitations of those desired things. I, for some reason, early on in life, attracted a lot of people in that camp who were the big dreamers, and they wanted to tell you all about the things that they had accomplished before that they had actually accomplished them. And so rather than taking that time of positive dreaming to pour it into action, it just forever stayed in the dream deferred category. So don't get stuck in that camp. Passive aggression, right? Avoiding refusal by passive avoidance. So this is kind of like very manipulative kind of acting out. Performing rituals, so patterns that delay. Are you that person? Like, today I was feeling like, well, like I have to clean the house. I have to clean the house before I get any work done. And that's also part of just like me needing to feel like centered and grounded in my environment. But it used to be my avoidant behavior to not actually want to put things out there. So it could be one or the other, but just know for yourself what that is for you. It could be projection, so seeing your own unwanted feelings on other people. The common example used in psychology for projection is if a significant other is feeling feelings like, oh, I really am attracted to that person over there, and they're feeling guilty, and they don't know how to process that guilt, they will go up to their significant other and say, why are you looking at other people? Stop checking out that girl's butt, or stop looking at that guy over there, because they are trying to release those unwanted feelings by projecting them onto other people. So that's projection. And if you are in business, that can come up in a lot of different number of ways, especially if you're coaching people. Be very, very careful about, practicing what you preach and not projecting your own fears and limitations onto your clients. Rationalization, creating logical reasons for bad behavior. Reaction formation, avoiding something by taking the polar opposite position. We've worked with hundreds of women, so this is not a specific person by any means, but we've had many ladies, within the first couple of days or weeks or months, all of a sudden they turn around and 1 minute they are all in on their business, the most passionate, lit up human being we've ever met. And then the next day we're getting an email saying, I'm the biggest failure in the world. I don't think online business is for me. I don't even really like being a health coach. And they just flip it around. And we're like, what? Yesterday you said this. So what's really going on? What's really under the surface here? So that is an avoidant behavior. If that's something you've done, you don't need to feel guilty or shameful. Just acknowledge that that is your default, and it is a major form of self-sabotage. All of these are. So we want to identify these so that we can redirect what is going on internally, acknowledge our emotions, redirect the habit when we realize that it's actually not serving us. Regression. This is another one I see quite a bit. So regression is returning to a child state to avoid problems. We also have repression, subconsciously hiding from uncomfortable thoughts, so just kind of not dealing with it. Symbolization, turning unwanted thoughts into metaphoric symbols. And trivializing, making small what is really something big. I think that's supposed to say making big what's really something small. So that list is from changingminds.org. Now, when I was really thinking about this, I started to just think about the women and the people who I work with one-on-one, and I just think it's so fascinating how certain patterns tend to come up, and they might be different things than the things that you see in your clients or your own personal behavior, because we are all taking in information from our own memories and experiences and perceptions and analyzing and categorizing and storing that information and applying meaning to it. So what I have kind of noticed in some of the patterns of some of the people that I've worked with over the last couple of years is, I think the biggest avoidant behavior, and there's kind of a few maybe clumped together, is the overthinking, perfectionist mode, micromanaging. And I'm not saying any of these need to be super dramatic. They're very subtle, and that's why sometimes they can be really hard to identify. They can be really hard or really sneaky. They're really sneaky, and you are outsmarting yourself. That's why sometimes going and getting clinical help, I'm huge advocate for therapy. Somebody who's smarter than me, who can outsmart me so that I can't navigate and escape things that I actually need to confront. It's important. So this overthinking, micromanaging, perfectionist mode, this usually manifests in someone saying, oh, I'm not ready yet to launch my podcast or my program or my Facebook page or my website or on and on and on and on. I'm not ready because I think I just need to fill in the blank. So if you say that, then you're probably trying to avoid or escape feelings of uncertainty, the unknown. It feels so scary, right? It's like, oh my God, the unknown, uncertainty, what's gonna happen, I don't know. But realize that when we get into that place where we just keep putting it off and it's building, it becomes that overthinking, our brains hurt, we're losing sleep. It becomes overwhelm, right? Because we are overstimulated by all of these ideas and all of these thoughts and we're not executing any of them. The overwhelm kind of becomes that information paralysis where we're stuck and we don't know what to do because now we have too many things in our brain. We can't move. We feel like we've got concrete blocks tied to our ankles. And then that turns into stress because when that's happening over a period of time or even a couple of hours and it's that chronic experience, we start to develop stress. And then for many people, it becomes anxiety. And then, when you sit down and start to try to do work and you feel really negative about your business, the experience that you have when you sit down at the computer every day or walk into a job is there's an immediate negative trigger because you're creating that pattern. So all of this, just overthinking, can kind of snowball into this really negative experience, and then that's when people drop off. They're like, oh, business isn't for me, or this wasn't for me, when really it's something that you created. It's something that you have control over, something that you can change and shift right now. Because what you've done essentially is you've practiced these habits and these emotions and these beliefs. You've allowed certain things to be triggered over a period of time. You've developed this habit and your brain actually becomes rewired to experience those things. So, as a little kid, you go up and touch the stove, you realize it's hot, and that's called conditioning. All of a sudden, you don't want to touch it anymore because you know that the stove is hot. Tying this in, like I said, perfectionist mode, the overthinking, it can snowball pretty quickly. That's probably the most common one that I see in the people that I work with. The other one that I feel is pretty common is the postponing, the delaying. This is the procrastination, the denying the importance of something, not prioritizing it. Why? Why are we procrastinating? Well, people go, oh, well, it's not the right time. I don't, it just doesn't feel like the right time. And that's BS. 9 times out of 10, that's probably BS. Yeah, you might have other things in your business that you're prioritizing so that you can achieve more profits, but bigger picture, when you're sitting there going, oh, it's really not that important, is it? Is it really? Do a little soul check on that. If you are putting off, postponing, launching a course, launching a podcast, finally telling the world, I'm a coach, I have a business, and you are terrified of putting that information out there, or maybe you are waiting to achieve a certain income level or a certain accolade before you go to an event or before you put yourself out there, that we can take a look at that specific example and go, okay, that is really driven by the fear of rejection, because in your mind you're saying, okay, if I go to this event and I have lost this much weight, or I have achieved this income level, or I have hit this rank, or whatever it may be, and that's what you are thinking about, you're being driven by the fear of rejection, because you're basically saying, if I achieve those things, I am more likely to feel secure, safe, accepted. There's a little bit more certainty based on the beliefs that you have about yourself and the world and rejection as a whole. So take a look at why you are postponing or delaying the launch of something. The whole idea of the right timing is just this nonsense. There is no right time. I've been reading a lot of books about the stock market, and they are always, Tony Robbins, the book, if you haven't gotten it, he has Money Master the Game and one other really fantastic new one. And he talks about how there is no right time to get into the stock market. There's no right time. You just have to jump in and do it. And that's really all of business, all of life. The longer you wait, the longer you're just sitting out. Get in the game. Get in the game. Why are you postponing? Why are you procrastinating? Why are you delaying the things that you need to accomplish? And then the third one that I see a lot is the blame game. And I would say this is a combination of blame, passing responsibility, acting out, and the regression, the becoming the child again. So we'll have, certain people who have moments where they're like, I have to have someone figure this out for me. Why aren't you giving me the answers? Maybe you have some health coaching clients or business coaching clients or life coaching clients who assume that you as the coach should have all of the answers and everything already figured out for them, and that they actually don't need to show up and do any work. They are avoiding doing the work for probably an infinite number of reasons, but it's important for you to recognize that you doing all the work for them not only doesn't serve them, but it's part of their journey and part of your job as the coach to help them overcome and uncover that thing that is driving that avoidant behavior. And I see a lot with the acting out stuff that all of a sudden, like I said earlier, people will go from being really obsessed with their business and all in to saying, I don't think I want to do this at all. Or they go from being totally responsible and totally on their stuff to wanting to act out almost like a child. It's so fascinating. But those are the three that I see personally. Those are how I categorize it. Those are the big three ones. The number one is overthinking, micromanaging perfectionism, saying, I'm not ready yet, I think I'm just going to wait to launch this thing. Number two is postponing, delaying importance, procrastinating, saying it's not the right time, I don't know, maybe it's not that important. And the third is blaming someone else and just passing the buck, saying I don't know, why, someone figure this out for me. So the solution to all of this, or I think a great exercise for you to do, is to sit back and either pay attention to your habits right now when things come up, or think back just in the last year on how you acted, what your behavior was like when you were presented with something uncomfortable. Now, you might have one thing that you really default in, one of those areas, or you may have a whole number of things that you go through. You may have a whole number of things. Your first instinct might be to go to avoidance, right? And say, I'm not going to worry about it. Like maybe, let's say you were asked to speak somewhere. Maybe you go to Toastmasters and you have to prepare your last speech, and this is gonna, if you guys don't know Toastmasters, it's a public speaking community that you can go and find one near you, toastmasters.org, and maybe you have that big speech and you are avoiding it, and you just, man, it scares the bejesus out of you to get up and do that number 12. I don't know why, but for some reason that one's really making you nuts. And if you start to look back at all the other speeches you did in that year, maybe you're gonna notice that every single time you have to sit down to write out your speech, your first thing is avoidance. Then maybe you go into a state of rationalizing why, I'm going to rationalize bad behavior. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to binge drink for 3 nights, even though this presentation is going to be in 3 days. So you're just going on a bender instead. And then maybe you're sitting there going, well, I'm going to be drunk and I'm just not going to look at it. You're going into repression. And then all of a sudden, you realize you have 2 days left until you have to present, and you haven't created a single slide, and you go into regression where you become almost like a child, and you're like, who's going to bail me out? Who's going to save me, right? There could be an infinite number of combinations to an infinite number of variables and degrees in which you kind of apply all of these things if you are, overwhelmed or feeling like you're not getting to that next level in your business. And I think the important thing to really say, too, is going back to the pain-pleasure principle, we all, as human beings, this is Tony Robbins, like, to a T, right? He says we either move towards pleasure or away from pain. Give me any scenario in your life, and you've either moved towards pleasure or away from pain. I'm going to go and upgrade my computer. That moves me toward pleasure and away from pain because I know it's not going to crash. I got a nice new computer. But maybe if I don't have any money, I'm going to wait to buy that computer because not having food on the table and not being able to buy groceries is actually more painful than not having a computer that works perfectly. So it's different for every person, but in any scenario, you will be able to identify that. And when you start to understand your own psychology and start to acknowledge your emotions, acknowledge what you're experiencing, really be able to identify your chronic habits, the things that are not serving you that you just keep doing, you will be so freaking empowered, and then it's like obvious to change. If you're walking around blind, then how are you going to make a change, right? You can obviously still make a positive change at any moment, but for many people, understanding their own psychology and understanding what makes them tick and being able to finally accept and acknowledge what is happening for them and having that awareness is essential. So this is an exercise in awareness for you. And if you're still sitting there going, well, maybe it's not totally killing me or my business or my sales or my life or my relationships, I want you to really ask yourself, what is the cost of continuing at this level with these habits and behaviors? What is the cost? What is the cost of these behavioral patterns over time? How is it going to impact your business and your income? How is it going to impact your relationships? If you have kids, how is it going to impact them? How is it going to impact your emotional well-being, your mental well-being, your spiritual well-being, your sense of confidence, purpose, fulfillment? So the homework for you, or the takeaway for you hopefully, is to say, okay, what are these things that I'm doing? All you need to do is have awareness. Pay attention to what your default response is when you are presented with something that makes you feel uncomfortable. And maybe you're not getting uncomfortable very often, and that's also a good thing to take a look at. If you're not in that state of growth on a regular basis, that could also be why it feels so new and scary. So when you're looking at a specific thing that you've been asked to do or that you're about to do, I would really identify, does me doing this thing make me feel nervous and excited in a good way? Do I feel expansive? What will I feel like when I'm done doing that thing? Or does it make me feel very negative and pulled down? I used to perform as an actor, and I used to go into Manhattan early mornings and go in feeling kind of unprepared for certain things. You get some sides, which is just a couple lines of a script, like be like, memorize it by tomorrow, or they'd send it to you at night and be like, memorize it by the morning, come in with it prepared and do it for us. And I used to get such intense feelings of fear, and I mean, my body would be like flight or fight mode 100%, but I would still do it. And after I would get out of that audition room, even if I didn't do a great job, most of the time I felt like it felt like a rush. It felt like I had just jumped out of a plane, because my body was like, I didn't die. I lived through it, and I was on a high of endorphins, of feeling that confidence, and boom, I did it. I lived through it, and I'm gonna do it again tomorrow, even though this scares me, because I know that this is what is going to help me get to that next level. So I think a lot of times we look to other people and gurus and read books and go back to courses that we've taken, when really you have the answer. The answer is not complicated. All these books behind me, there's a lot of amazing content in here. Everything that I shared today, we're kind of picking it apart and breaking it all down. But at the end of the day, you know in your gut what needs to be done. You just need to do it. If it's something you want, and it's something that feels good, and it's not gonna hurt anybody else, and it's something that's gonna be a positive impact on the world, then do it. Like today, there's something right now, I'm talking to you, that you've been putting off for the last week, the last month, the last 10 years. Start today. If it's the business you've always wanted to create, start writing down ideas and mapping out a plan. Maybe start looking for a business coach. If it's the weight loss thing, decide to just go out for a walk today. Make one small change, one little thing that you can do today to move you towards that bigger end vision.